How are you?
Right. Yeah, not bad. It's Sunday morning here. It's really hot, miserable. Apart from that, how about you?
Yeah, it's Sunday evening here. Now,
Yeah, I
as
know.
way of introduction, I just want
Yeah,
people to kind of get a bit of feel about who you
yeah,
are. So
yeah.
I sort of found out about you because you commented on one of my episodes
That's
about
right.
the Malcolm McLaren
Yeah,
touch book. Um,
yeah, yeah,
and I said to you, it would be great to get you on the podcast to chat about what you're doing. And it turns out
yeah.
that you're doing some stuff for a book about McLaren.
That's right.
But I thought it would be a great opportunity to talk about your career,
Okay.
any stories you've got, and also talk about
Yeah.
this upcoming project. So let's dive in straight at the beginning.
Okay. Right.
So just as an introduction for people who don't know, your
Yeah.
background is you've worked with a
Yeah.
huge plethora of artists. You've worked with The Clash, Bow Wow Wow,
Yeah.
Culture Club, Duran Duran, INXS,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Malcolm McLaren as well. But give us a bit of
Yeah.
background about how you started in your career.
Well, I'm originally, obviously I'm from London originally, and although when I was about 11, we moved out into St Albans in Hertfordshire. You
Hmm.
know, yeah, Hertfordshire, the Garden of London, or whatever they call it. But and there I went to school there. But then I went to art school in Watford in Hertfordshire. 19, well, I hate to say the date, but 1976. I went to art school, which was the year that punk exploded. Well, it didn't explode then. It kind of started in around 75, 76, and so I very early on went to see Sex Pistols at the 100 Club with a friend of mine, Pete. We went together, and yeah, there was about 50 people in the audience. And I just started art school, and really I hadn't a clue what I was doing, and yeah, it was all very new. So I got thrown in at the deep end because we were going to see the Pistols and the Clash. We saw them at the 100 Club Festival, and we saw them supporting each other. And we went to as many gigs as we could that particular year. And during that time, we kind of it was explosion of the amateur really, and up until that point, we or the music industry was dominated by people like Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones, and it was punk was the antithesis of that. It was
Yeah.
all DIY. If you could play three chords, you could start a band. Whereas all these other bands were these virtuoso musicians, and it was all this big ivory tower that just didn't seem attainable at all to anybody, even art. And the thought that I could ever get a career out of designing album covers or whatever it was not even a consideration. So it was all like a bit of a boys' club up until then. And what was so great about punk was it meant people had to work within a limited framework. Didn't have accessibility to some of the things that people who had previous experience from, but it was a never-ending circle. You couldn't get in unless you knew somebody. You couldn't do this, and it went round and round and round. So whether you were talented or not in certain cases was lost on people. So what punk did was it opened up that door. So my introduction to go and see the Pistols and the Clash and the various bands at that point was got me in, and I happened to be at art school. So my whole thing with meeting bands was, oh, you should get me to do your cover or whatever. During this period, we met Bernard Rhodes, who was Clash's notorious manager, and and he asked us to do the Clash White Man Hammersmith Palais single cover. I at this point I worked with my friend Pete Barry. We went to art school together. Well, actually, yeah, just let me jump
That's the
back.
revolver one, isn't it?
That's the one, yeah, the gun.
Yeah.
But actually, before that, the first job I ever did actually was, well, so I've told the story many times, but we would fanzines were becoming big, So we had a college like, I guess it was student like Xerox stapled together student magazine, because my college, Watford Art School, was an annex of the main college, which is Watford Technical College, which was primarily a printing college. And we were in the art school was in an old Victorian school in another part of Watford, but we got onto this idea that we took the magazine. It was called Schmuck, this magazine, and it was all like very student union kind of like, real ale stories about who was selling the best real ale in Hertfordshire, and just that sort of student boring rubbish. And then so we thought, hey, hold on a second, we could use this as a fanzine and we could blag some records. So me and Pete and another friend of mine, Callie, we would take this up to London, this magazine, and we would show it to people at record labels and say, this is our magazine. It wasn't our magazine, although we used to rewrite all the articles as a joke. We used to steal the articles that they wrote and we used to make up stories and put them in instead, and it became this kind of hilarious adventure. So we use it as a way of getting free records from record labels. This is our fans. At that point, everyone was making fanzine and everyone was getting free records. So we thought we might as well jump on the bandwagon. So we were doing this, and we'd get some records. Didn't matter who they were, because if we didn't like them, we'd go to Virgin and sell them. And one day we were up in the offices of Phonogram Records, and the woman at the reception said, "Oh, stay here. Someone wants to talk to you." And so we thought, the game is up. They're onto our thing, our scheme. They're gonna. And so we were nervously sitting in this room, and these guys, long-haired kind of guys, came out and said to us, "Come with us." So now we're thinking we're really in trouble, because at this point, my friend Callie had a screwdriver and was trying to take the silver and gold records off the wall, and steal them. And then we're taking this room, and then this guy comes in, and he said to us, this is your magazine, and we said, yeah. And so you're punks, right? And we looked at it, because we had dyed hair and everything. And he said, well, we have a record label called Sire Records, and we have a band called the Ramones. Of course, we knew who the Ramones were, and we knew who Sire Records were. We completely knew who they were. And they said the Ramones are coming over to do a tour here, and we're releasing a special single called Sheena's Punk Rocker, a 12-inch version of that record. And we were looking for someone to do t-shirts, promotional t-shirts for it, a limited edition. So we're like, wow, brilliant. We're like, we couldn't believe it. We thought from one minute we're in trouble to the next minute we'd be given an opportunity to work with the absolute, godfathers, if you like, of punk. I mean, every band that was a punk band at that time were influenced by the Ramones. So we were asked to do this t-shirt. And to be honest, we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. We barely started art school, so we didn't really know how to do this. We had no clue how to do it. And I remember, I don't know, we just, what I loved about that period was nobody gave a shit. Well, we kind of were excited, but we thought, we've actually got to do some work. And we weren't that kind of keen on having to work for stuff. So we got on, I remember we were on the train to go and have a meeting, and we thought, what are we going to do? We hadn't done anything. We're on the way to a meeting. We hadn't done anything. We had this t-shirt, and on the train back up to London, when we were presenting it, we were cutting things out and sticking them on a real t-shirt, right? So we got to this meeting, and we gave them this t-shirt that was like this old t-shirt. We did it on the train. We cut some stuff out of a newspaper. We stuck it on. I've actually got the t-shirt here, but we had no idea what present. We didn't even know how to do artwork. So we in our heads thought, well, maybe we have to do it actually on the t-shirt. And when we got there, you could tell these people that sort of like, what have we let ourselves in for? And it was, I've got it here actually. It's like worth like about, I think, $2,000 now, this t-shirt. So we're on the train, and this is the results of it. It's one of the rarest shirts, and I'll tell you why. Because see that paint on it?
Yeah.
Yeah. We had 1,500 t-shirts, and we went down to a warehouse in Putney, and we actually had to hand splash each t-shirt, 1,500 of them, right? So us and about 3 of our friends, our girlfriends at the art school, went down to Putney, and we were doing these t-shirts, and first of all, the fumes were terrible, and then we got bored after we must have done about maybe 1,000 at the most, and we got bored with it, so we threw the rest of them in the Thames, and so this limited edition of 1,500 became 1,000, and actually when I look at it, it's absolute rubbish. I mean, it had no thought behind it whatsoever. I mean, you can see, for example, like that headline that says there on the back, that just came out the Daily Mirror.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. This was the first thing I ever did, first commissioned piece of work, and we didn't think anything of it. And just to cut back, a few years ago, I started to work on a book, and someone said to me, "Can you get hold of the remote? You should get hold of the remote t-shirt." It was up for auction at Sotheby's, and I think it went for about £1,500 or 15, whatever for that t-shirt, and I was embarrassed by it, to be quite honest. Back up there, and so but like I said, we really weren't thinking of us as this has been a potential career, or we were going to make money out of it. In fact, we didn't get paid to do it. We were invited to they played at the Roundhouse, and we were invited to we were invited to the show at the Roundhouse. They played with it was Ramones, the Talking Heads, and the Saints from Australia, and that t-shirt, I never even had a copy of it until about 10 years ago. Some guy contacted me on Facebook, and he said, "Are you the Nick Egan that did the Ramones t-shirt?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I've got one. Do you want to buy it off me?" And I said, "Well, I'm just going to sell it to me." And he said, "Well, I'd like £500 for it." And I'm like, "You know what?" I said, "I didn't get paid for it in the first place. I don't really want to spend 500 quid." So
Yeah.
he sold it to me now, and for 200. I bought that for £200, that t-shirt. And so because it was the only thing missing really of my, and that was the very, very beginning of my career. And well, it wasn't just me and Callie and Pete worked on it together. I couldn't believe it took three of us to do that. And this was all still in my first year at art school. And through that, through the meeting Paul Simonon at the 100 Club from the Clash is how we got to do the White Men in Hammersmith. But no, actually, no, it wasn't through Paul. I can't. Well, we got to know the Clash. That's right, through, because one of my fellow students at Watford, Mick North, who sadly was killed in a motorcycle accident the next year, went to Byam Shaw's art school with Paul Simonon to do a foundation course. And he said, "Oh, if you ever see Paul, go and say hi." So we did. And this was what's so great about punk. You know, I'd been to see David Bowie, I don't know, about a few months before that, or a month or two before that at Wembley. And it was like, you know, I had restricted view seats. And restricted view was in the very back row at the side of the stage. So literally, the only time I saw Bowie was when he came to the front of the stage. And it was like, it was so, it seemed so unattainable and so distant and so a million miles from where I was from. And literally a couple of weeks later, we were going to see the Pistols at the 100 Club.
What were the Pistols like when they were live? Could they play? Were they good, or were they still very raw?
I mean, you know, it really, yeah, they were great. But I love David Bowie, and I still love David Bowie. And his show was brilliant. It was a thin white Duke tour, and it was all that. He had the black waistcoat on, a white shirt, and the Gitan cigarettes, and then, but it was so far away from where you were. I couldn't imagine ever even being anywhere near there. And then the next week or two, or wherever it was, we were seeing this band who was standing next to us in the audience who just get up on the stage and play. There's no doubt that their effect, well, on me and the people, because this is before anybody knew what punk was, before it became the cartoon image it later became. This was really more of an art school movement than anything else. A bunch of dispossessed kids who were going to art school who loved Roxy and Bowie and wanted to do something else. So when they got on the stage, yeah, they were just something that you'd never seen before. It was, and you felt to be part of that. You knew there was something important about it, because literally every week we go, there more bands were coming up, and of course the Clash, who we did get to work with, and that was Bernie Rhodes. We actually used to, me and Pete used to hitch to go and see him play. We'd hitch to wherever it was, Manchester or Birmingham. We could really go into Clash, because Pistols weren't playing that much, really at that point. And so we went to see the Clash, and one day we were at Birmingham. We used to hitch to places, and then we didn't know where we were going to stay. We just, at the end of the show, we'd say, "Can we crash on your floor?" or whatever. And people would say no or yes. And one day we're trying to get a ride back to London, and this guy called Mickey Foot, who was the Clash's sound mixer, live sound mixer. And he told Bernie, and Bernie was the Clash manager. Bernie, infamous for having the Clash, the old Renault with the license plate CLA5H on the back of it. And so he said, I'll give you guys a lift back to London. And we kind of thought, because we had no concept of who a manager was. I mean, we weren't stupid. I mean, we knew, record covers were a big thing. We'd read about who was engineer, who played bass, on whatever record. So we had a sense of what it was, but it was still a big mystery. And so he gave me and Pete a lift back to London. Well, actually, we lived in St. Albans at that point. And St. Albans was, obviously, it's about a 20-minute train drive from London to St. Albans. But we didn't want to tell Bernie we were from St. Albans because it didn't seem very cool to be from St. Albans. So we got a lift back to London. And as we're on the M1 driving back, we drove right past St. Albans. So we got Eddie drops us off at Euston Station, and we had to sleep on the platform and get the train back to St. Albans in the morning. But on the way down, and I've always had a soft spot for Bernie. He told us his manifesto, the Clash manifesto, which was is a very almost Marxist, like total. This is what the Clash are about. It's not just a band. It's like the four guys on stage. It's the people do the sound. It's the people do the clothes. And it was great. It was revolutionary. I mean, it was absolutely revolutionary. It was like, we're going to take over. We're going to show these people that we run. He was very, very articulate, Bernie, and so and he said, so we're listening to this stuff. We had no clue why he was telling us this, and he said, well, we're looking for a new single cover for White Man in Hammersmith Palais, and Paul says, you guys are art school, so we need a cover for White Man in Hammersmith Palais, which is the record's coming out. And then we got to, so we were like, just done the Ramones, now we're about to do the Clash. It was almost like how did we, it was surreal to us, because that was the day we went from being fans, because we were fans, we were like fans. We followed the Clash around and hitched places, and because it was such an important thing for us to do. And it was so, I mean, I remember when the Pistols first came out, like there was a few articles in the music press. One day we were out somewhere and we met these two girls and we were talking to them, and by this point we started to look punky, but nobody knew what punk was. I mean, people used to look at us, they thought we were homeless because we'd have ripped shirts. And there's a John Ingham book called The Spirit of 76, and there's a picture of me and Pete in it. We're so young in it, and I've got a handmade New York Dolls t-shirt on it, and Pete's got a painted shirt on it because we used to paint our shirts, and we it was our look, and we loved it because nobody knew what it was, nobody knew what punk was, and so we felt like we belonged to something. I mean, that was the thing. I think everyone wants to feel like they belong to a movement, and unlike today, where kids want to fit in and they want to go with what everyone else is going to in case they feel left out. We didn't want to be like anyone else. We didn't want anyone. It was a our thing, and fuck everyone else. And so we really, it was a great moment in time. So to suddenly be asked to do a Ramones t-shirt and then a Clash single cover, we couldn't believe it. So anyway, to cut a long story short, the band wanted something that was very reggae. Those old reggae studios in Jamaica, and they had a look to them, and one of them was a gun. People say it was a rip-off of the Liechtenstein, and Liechtenstein was obviously a motif on it, but it really came from there's a reggae studio. So I did the front cover with the gun, and then Pete did the back cover with the target, the guy getting shot. So we did that, and I've always said this, my firsts have always been great. I mean, my first album cover was Dexys Midnight Runners. My first single cover was The Clash. And my first t-shirt was the Ramones. And my first video was Iggy Pop. So, I was very blessed to be in the right place at the right time. I didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't have a clue. Even though I was at art school, I was at the beginning of art school where they were teaching this stuff, but I was ahead of everyone else in that respect. So,
it was interesting what you said about the Clash. Being more attainable than, say, the other acts. It's interesting you say that, because I did an interview with Steve Ignorant from Crass, and he
Right.
said he saw the Clash, and Joe Strummer said, if you think you can do better, you try. And that's how Crass started. So, and that obviously turned into a whole different thing with the whole Crass thing in the 80s.
It became that actually really was more what Bernie was talking about, what Crass became, because they became their own little industry there, totally independent of big labels and totally run their way. And that's really what Bernie wanted for the Clash. It didn't work out that way.
No.
Because once you sign to a record label like CBS, you don't really have much chance. But that's interesting, because I mean, I was never a big fan of Crash, but I like their, I like that was us and fuck everyone else attitude that they had, and Bernie had that attitude. So from the Clash, I love. They were one of the best bands I've ever seen play live, but they were a real pain in the neck to deal with. I mean, very prima donna-ish. I love Joe. Joe was great. Joe was actually the real thing. He was more the real thing than anybody else in the punk movement, and but because he went to boarding school and his dad was some sort of had some kind of ambassadorial job. Yeah, people said, "Well, he's not working class," and it wasn't about working class. It was about that. In fact, was the last thing it was about. It wasn't about any class. The whole idea was it was meant to be classless, and in the very beginning, it's actually very arty. It was only later when the media got it, you saw these ridiculous Liberty spikes and piercings. Nobody had a tattoo and nobody had pierced anything back then. It was all and the reason clothes were shabby because most of these people were like myself were at art school, so you get paint on them, and so you wear clothes from thrift stores that
that's
were
right.
ripped and
John Lydon, his look was because his clothes had fallen apart and he had to hold them together with safety pins. It wasn't I hate Pink Floyd t-shirt. I think he just did it. It wasn't.
Well, he was genius for that. I mean, I Hate Pink Floyd I think was as a masterpiece. He did that, and he wore it better than anyone else because, Vivian Westwood and Malcolm McLaren at the time, Seditioners at the time, was not a cheap place to buy clothes. I mean, a pair of boots back then, which I bought, was £30. That would be about the equivalent of like £200 or £300 now, and so you had these two extremes. Malcolm and Vivian's clothes were brilliant and subversive and all those great things about it. And you had to be really brave to wear those things because nobody knew what it was. As soon as you can put it down to the Bill Grundy show. As soon as that happened, it all changed. And it all changed where it became dangerous. I got beaten up on a few occasions and people just, the hatred that people had without even understanding what it was about. And
the filth and the fury.
The filth and the fury. And you know what? And I loved all of that. I thought it was great. There was no way I was going to, even though I got beaten up by, I'm arrested and God knows what else, there was no way I was going to change the way I looked because it was like I felt part of something. So basically, that's where it started. Over those periods, I was still at art school when we did the Dexys cover, and that was because Bernie Rhodes managed Dexys Midnight Runners. And then from doing the Dexys cover, I was at EMI, where Duran Duran were out, ironically, and also Bow Wow Wow. And one day I was I was never a big fan of Dexys Midnight Runners. They were way too totalitarian to me. Donkey jackets and, Railwaymen tea and it was. I did like a little bit of more on the glamorous side. I did like sexiness in music, and Dexys weren't sexy to me. The Pistols and Ramones was sexy in a different way, and so by now we've gone beyond punk, and it's all become this ridiculously over the top. Kids walking down King's Road, safety pins everywhere through their noses, and his spiky hair. That I never saw a single punk like that when it was in the beginning. So
it became a caricature, didn't it?
It became a caricature, and Rotten had his spiky hair. The Clash did, but they and I love the Clash's painted shirts and they're writing words on shirts, and I loved all of that. So anyway, and Dexys were a little bit too overly working class, and not there's anything wrong with that because my dad was working class, my mum was a middle class. I grew up in a council flat, but I was arty because my mum was arty. So and that was tough, being arty and living in a council flat and going to an all boys comprehensive school, it was tough to be arty. If you're arty in certain areas, you were considered whatever. So I had to hide my artiness to a degree. The irony of all of that was being at a working class, comprehensive all boys school was a tough. Talk about bullying, bullies. I never got bullied, but there was terrible bullying going on. But it wasn't just the kids; it was the teachers that bullied people, and it was an intimidating place to be. And you had to fit. That's where you had to fit in. This is all pre-punk now. But what was interesting about that was the working class kids, the boys in particular, London, loved reggae music, ska, loved soul music, and loved David Bowie. And David Bowie, you couldn't get more like the antithesis of what working class, racist, homophobic, sexist boys are at these schools, these comprehensive schools. I get mixed up because public school here is a comprehensive school. Public school in England is a posh school. So there is this inherent creativeness that goes within the sort of lower working class, middle class collective in the UK that isn't in this country. And I think that there's a coolness of working class in, or at least it was. I don't know what it's like anymore. There's a coolness of working class. So I kind of lived I lived in a council flat, but I liked art, so I kind of fit in perfectly with that. So I knew what it was like to live in a council flat, and I knew what it was like to go to an all boys school and the shit that went on there. But so the punk thing was a release from that. I could never, my friends at the time were racist, they homophobic, they want to go and beat gay guys up or black or Pakistanis up. And I suddenly started, but I was not like that. I was I used to go to art galleries. My mum even went to the ballet, but I had to keep that all a secret. So it was a struggle. So going to art school released me from those people. That was the danger of being working class back then, living in a council flat. If you want to survive, you had to be like them. And by saying being like them, I never did those things that go out on a Saturday night looking to fight and beat anyone up. That's what the whole go to the pub, get drunk, go up there. So I loathed that. So art school was an escape for me to get away and get to where I wanted to. Get to be creative and have a word and go against things you didn't believe in. And I went on the Rock Against Racism march. One of the great things about punk was it brought black and white kids together through reggae and punk. And I went to the Rock Against Racism march where the Clash played in Victoria Park in East End of London, and I thought that was great. That was a great thing because there are a lot of these kids that don't really want to be part of that. They end up becoming part of it because that's the only choice they have. And punk to me got me away from that possibility ever happening. But I saw it at one point. I thought, is this my life? Am I going to pre-punk? I didn't belong with these people, but they were kind of my friends, and so I didn't know. That punk got me away from it. Who knows what I could have turned out to be like if it hadn't been for that. But it wouldn't have been the direction I wanted to go in. So punk took me a different direction. So
you ended up at EMI. Is that where you met McLaren?
Yeah. So I was at EMI and I saw Malcolm up there one day. And of course, growing up, my and the couple generations after, Malcolm McLaren is like the cultural god. He's like, Malcolm made a record. Malcolm was the guru genius Bengali, and I take issue to John Lydon's always slagging Malcolm off, because if it wasn't for Malcolm, there wouldn't be a Sex Pistols. There's no doubt about that. But John Lydon, to his credit, he took that subversiveness that he already had, and he took it to a brilliant degree. But to me, it was him and Malcolm were the two people. If I didn't idolize, but I just thought they were it for me. And so I met Malcolm. Yeah, I was at EMI doing something to do with Dexys, Midnight Runners. At this point, I'm still working with my friend, still my best friend Pete, who now lives in Australia, and he still does album covers, and we were working on it together. And I met Malcolm. So back in those days, I went from being very sort of shy kid, you know, to being very ballsy, not in your face, but yeah, confident, I suppose. And so I went up to Malcolm. When I realised Malcolm was like, especially in England, was like this kind of god-like person who people just like wanted to get, to work with him or get attention from him, or whatever. So I saw him and I started chatting to him. We were chatting, and he was telling me about, and he predicted the future. He said, you know, it's not going to be about album covers anymore. Album covers are going to not mean anything. It's going to be about videos, and this is before MTV had really even started. It's got videos and pirating music, taking it for free. Now this is before the internet. This is before any of those streaming and Napster and all those people came along, where you could basically take it off. So his thing was take a cassette and you record it off the radio. You don't need to buy anything, right? So this was pre the internet, but basically what he was predicting was what the internet became, and that became a way to getting stuff for free. I mean, you know, Napster, one of the first, and now you have to pay for it, but it kind of, like I said, it's all the future. It did become about videos and not about album covers. And album covers was my thing. And anyway, we ended up talking. We went out to get some sushi restaurant, and he said, well, I do need somebody though to do the new Bow Wow Wow cover, if you'd be interested. And I'm like, yeah. I mean, because by this point Bow Wow Wow were Malcolm's new project, and I still think Bow Wow Wow don't get the recognition they deserve for being one of the first multicultural bands in England. Now we're talking about the 70s, the early 80s, when England was divided. It was, you know, there was still a lot of racism, especially amongst the establishment. And
well, there was all the riots in '81, wasn't there? Dead cities from the exploited.
Yeah. And I was living in Stockwell when those riots happened. But so you got this Burmese girl. Dave was from like I think Trinidad or somewhere like that. And so you got this Asian, Afro-Cuban kind of multi-mix who came up with this incredible. Well, Malcolm came up with the Burundi thing, and apparently the story is that he played the record at the wrong speed. It was meant to be 33, and he played it at 45 RPM. So poor old Dave Bob. But so they came out with something that was absolutely, completely original. I mean, I know he did it with Adam the Ants, and I know that Adam paid him, but he gave him the idea to do Bow Wow Wow.
And most of the people left Adam and the Ants, didn't they, to join Bow Wow Wow?
Yeah, I know. The rest of them did, and then he had these incredible clothes, the pirate clothes, to go with it. So to me, actually, they were more original than the Pistols, and the fact he took a 16-year-old girl to sing. Yeah, and I liked Annabella a lot, and I love the guys in the band. I'm still close to Dave and still close to Lee, and so to me they were everything Dexys weren't. They were sexy, they were stylish, they were funny, they were all these things. So to be involved with that was great. And like I say, they really and you never seen, and all the music that's been regurgitated over and over. You've never really seen anyone try and do anything like that again. That sort of Afro-Cuban kind of like Burundi. You know, I know No Doubt did it a little bit, but they were great and they were sexy and they looked brilliant. And so that was what I was about. I was much more. It wasn't like it. I was much more into the sort of the visual beauty of it all than I was with Dexys. I mean, yeah, Dex was just a bunch of guys and. Yeah, and there was I didn't have anything in common, but I did with Bow Wow Wow, and I became really close to them. In fact, I went on the road with them and a lot of fun with those guys. But that cover, yeah, Malcolm wanted to do something that was from a classical painting. And we had three ideas. There was a painter called the Bolt, who was, I can't remember who the artist was for that one, but there was also David. Liberty leading the people of the French Revolution, the girl holding the French flag, and there was the Manet one, which was the lunch on the grass. And so I thought that I really wanted to do the Liberty leads the people with a flag, and it was a girl, and but in the end, we went with Malcolm's Manet and lunch on the grass. Now, you know, it's so funny how morals change, because back then we weren't thinking of anything to do with being sexual. It was just a subversive. When Manet painted this back in 18, whatever it was, it caused such controversy. Now, what people misunderstand, it didn't cause controversy because the woman was naked on the cover, because Paris was full of naked women. It was like the Folies Bergère and Moulin Rouge and all those places. You know, Paris is probably the most liberated sexually city in the world. So it wasn't because of that. It was because it was the technique of the artist, and it was controversial at that time because it was, people thought it was lazy, and so that was what the controversy did. And in England, it didn't really cause as much pressure. The only people that made it controversial was the media, because we'd been through naked cowboys with their dicks touching, and a naked school. We've been through that. We'd shot, Jesus upside down on a cross with a swastika on it. We've been through that. This was nothing. But the media kind of jumped on and tried to make it into something it wasn't, which is this lascivious, dirty old man thing, which I don't think any of us that worked on it ever thought it was sexual whatsoever. Just the fact that a 16-year-old girl was topless, but you don't see her breast, you see the side of the breast. So we never thought about it as being that. It became that, and partly because of Annabella's mother, because Annabella was 16. We were breaking the law. She was a minor in a public place, and there was one point that where the police were looking for me and Malcolm. So I had to get on a plane to fly to Amsterdam on Annabella's 18th birthday, which is Halloween, funny enough, October 31st, to have her sign an affidavit saying that she allowed this to happen. So I got on a plane and she signed it. And because she was 16. I realized what we were doing at the time was a little bit, not naughty, but just, we didn't care. We weren't really caring about how she might feel about this, because she was 16. She's probably still a virgin. It was like all these guys are standing around. I took my girlfriend with me. That's to make her feel, okay. And then Boo, one of the dancers, was there with us. It was never, ever meant to be sexual. Now, the funny thing about it is that I came across the footage of the shoot on YouTube, which was like finding gold in a gold mine, because I had no memory of it except for we were in a park south of London, and Andy O did the photograph. His assistant was carrying this big suitcase thing. It was a video camera, and really at this point, again, videos were not even on people's radar. It was just something that was and he had a video camera and he was video recording this thing. So when I found this footage it was like, oh my God, this is like a treasure. Because if it was now, everybody would have a cell phone. And the cell phone has taken away the value of certain things, because, it doesn't mean it's meaningless anymore, because everyone, the guy with the dog walking along the path would have had a video camera. It's like everyone was, but this thing. So I got to see the process a little bit of how we were doing it. And we followed that Manet painting to the detail, and I don't think I know that Malcolm's perverseness of getting people wound up. I knew that he kind of thought, well, we did something really tasteful and great here. So, but I knew that Malcolm knew that it would cause some kind of thing, because he liked that. He loved that sort of thing, getting people to get all put out of joint because of something. And this was art, but they're going to focus on the naked girl. Everyone's going to focus on the naked girl, and that's what they did. But it didn't really cause as much controversy as people say it did, because, like I said, we'd already been through all this other stuff. It's far more controversial than this. It was Annabella's mother that was the one, and she went to the media, and she went to the police, and she went to all these things, and she got everybody all really riled up about it. But from my point of view, it was great, because it really put me in as being part of this. And my idea for it, funny enough, was Ennio did the pictures, was not to have any type on it. So because I thought, well, let's treat it like it's a painting. You don't write on a painting. So let's keep it just to come. And the record label just did not want to do that. But we managed to get, I think the first pressing was just the way I wanted it. But RCA didn't want to pay me for it, because they said, well, what did you do? And I said, well, I art directed it. Me and Malcolm got the photograph. I was there. Andio took the picture. I said, I know, but he wouldn't have taken the picture unless he had direction. Anyway, it was my first thing of being an art director, and the stupidity of record labels not getting the concept of the art at all. I mean, when they did the first run through, then they stuck Bow Wow Wow on the top of the logo I designed. But it's been 3 covers that I've done. I've done lots of covers. I've done Iggy Pop and Psychedelic Furs and Belinda Carlisle and Bob Dylan. I think the 4 that I get the most known for are the Bow Wow Wow cover, and then the Duck Rock cover, and the INXS kit cover, and the Bob Dylan. Those are the 4 album covers. And you know what? And when I look at it, rightly so, because each one of them had something that was had something about them. It wasn't just always a pretty picture of a cover of an artist on the band. It had thought, a lot of thought behind them. And
so the INXS cover, which I think is amazing. I guess did you meet the band? Is that how you came up with the concept of having Michael and the? How did that come together?
Well, that's not. Well, I was living in New York, and this is when I guess rap, but yeah, because me and Michael were at the very beginning of rap music when we were in New York for the Duck Rock thing. But later after this, I'm in New York, and kind of rap was taking off, and really didn't hear much rock music at that day. But there was this one song, and I thought it was brilliant. Didn't know who it was. It was What You Need, and I'd hear it everywhere. And I was walking down the street one day with my friend Ali, and I heard it come out, and I said, I love this song. I said, I have no idea who does it. She goes, oh, that's INXS. They're really good friends of mine. And she said, in fact, they're going to be in town playing. I said, well, God, you should come to the show with me. So I had no idea who Michael was. I really didn't know anything about INXS. It was one of those names I didn't know what they were. The INXS. I didn't know. Yeah, I know they were really popular, but I had just been working with the Psychedelic Furs. And so I went to this show. I didn't know who Michael was. And these Aussie boys all came up, really friendly guys. And then finally I got to meet Michael. Michael and I went out after, stayed up all night. We went to an after-hours club. We stumbled home at dawn, and we were bonded as friends. And so I said, he goes, oh, we're making a new record. I'm going back to Australia, we're making a new record. And I said, well, I'd love to do the cover. He said, great. He goes, why don't you come down to, I went to see them next week. They played in LA, and I went to see them at the Greek Theatre. And then Michael said, oh, come down to Australia, come down to Sydney. So just like that. So I thought, what am I going to do? So I got myself a ticket. I thought, well, you know what? I better get down and sort it out. It's not the sort of thing I can do otherwise. So I got myself a ticket and went to Sydney, but I had nowhere to stay. I didn't know what I was going to do when I got to Sydney. So Michael said, oh, yeah, you can stay with me. So I went to stay with Michael. And then I remember we went to the studio to Rhinoceros, so they're recording it. And I was staying with him, and he lived on the North Shore in a place called Kirribilli. And he woke me up, and he said, well, I'm going to the studio. Do you want to come with me? So he had a skateboard with him, a skateboard that was on the cover, actually. And he would skate down the street, and he'd stop and wait for me, and skate down the street and stop and wait for me. And again, this was really early on with the whole skateboard thing. Yeah, and he had that, it was called, it was a particular skateboard that is coveted by skateboarders now. And so he was skateboarding, and I just thought, this guy looks fucking brilliant. I mean, he's going down a skateboard. He's got this leather jacket and his trousers on. His hair's all blowing in the wind. He's got sunglasses on. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that he wasn't that famous. I mean, he was famous. They were famous, but he wasn't. Nobody knew who he was. They knew the band, and big fans did. And at the time, I was working with the Psychedelic Furs, and I loved Richard and the Furs. More people knew who Richard Butler was, and they sold far fewer records than they did INXS. And in my head, I thought, there's something wrong here about this. So anyway, I went to studio, and what I realized is nobody knew I was coming. Nobody knew who I was. So I thought, and that's typical Michael. It's just like, yeah, come on down. You know, I didn't really think about it. So I thought I better entrench myself with the band and get to know the band and get some feelings. But all I knew in the back of my head was, I've got to get people to know not just who he is, but who this band are, because I thought they were brilliant, absolutely brilliant live. The show I saw in New York was completely different from the show I saw in LA. Michael had the audience like in his hands. I'm like, this guy should be the biggest star in the world. But I also knew I was dealing with a band, so I decided that what they needed, they were too Australian. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but it just so happened that Men at Work had that horrible song out at the time. You know, what's it called? What's it called, that song? I can't remember. It was horrible.
Down Under.
Yeah, and it was like, yeah, it was like a cliche. We're Aussies, you know, and I thought nobody
that,
yeah, and you know what? It was a hit. It was a quirky song.
They got done for it though, didn't they?
What?
They got done for it.
Why?
Yeah, because because the actual melody is the Kookaburra. It's a they got sued massively. Yeah.
At the time, you know, I used to love magazines and fashion magazines and books. I had loads of books, and I noticed that in fashion, everything was starting to be like against a white background, and so I thought it's clean. The silhouette is great. You can see the shape. It's not busy. And what I'll do is I went off of that idea of and also I wanted to shoot the band because, you know, trying to shoot a band, 5 people, 6 people together is a nightmare because you've got always 2 people or 1 person doesn't look very good in the picture. So you got or you got 3 waiting to be taking their picture, taking 2 or somewhere else, and when you get the 2, the other 3 have gone. So I thought what I'd do is I shoot them individually. I had this idea of making this band like a band. I wanted to have Michael as the focus, but I also didn't want to make it just about him because I knew it was a band. So the reason I came up with the idea of having half off was because I thought, well, that's showing him, but it's not showing him as the main guy. And you got the other guys on the band. It was, I know that since then there was arguments about who should have been on the front and whatever went on. And I knew I had to have that skateboard on the cover. I knew I had to have that because
at the top, at
the top, because I saw Michael, and I lived in California, and I knew about skateboarding. So, well, I didn't live in California at this point. I've been there, but I was living in New York. But and it wasn't a New York thing. It wasn't a London thing. It definitely was a West Coast and an Australian thing. So I knew they had to be on the cover. So I did that composite, and you know, I knew that they couldn't be. I didn't want people to think this is an Australian band. I wanted people to think they were an international band that nobody knew where they were from. They could have been from London or Paris or New York or LA or wherever. And so it was, I had to fight with management over it. Michael backed me up, but it became so massively, I mean, they made a brilliant album. There's no doubt about it, no question about that. It was a brilliant album and all the stars aligned on that. But I think what it did exactly what I wanted it to do. It showed Michael, who looked great on it. It showed they were a band because I wanted to make it was really important they became a band and it wasn't just a front man. So I got that, and it was a band bickered about it should be on the cover. And I used to say to bands when they got like that, okay, look at the cover and look at it as if it's not your record, and look at it and go, is that a good cover or a bad cover? And I said, so take yourself out of the equation. And, you know, and people tend to agree, okay, it's a great cover, but I'm not on the front. You know, that's why I made it a gatefold sleeve. I mean, I knew what I was doing was absolutely right. So I just knew in my instinct this was the right thing to do, and it was, and you know, it became massive. So that was Kick.
And the logo they still used, didn't they? They used that logo for their career, didn't they?
Oh, I know. Yeah, and I wanted to make it all very clean and sort of clean edges. Yeah, and that was in the days when there was no Photoshop, and so, I wanted it to look like it was one picture, but it wasn't at the same time. You see what I mean? It's like, so it looked like they're all standing on that site, but there was something weird about it because they were all in focus, and it wouldn't have been the case if they'd really been there. And I like that false perspective and that and then Richard Lowenstein, of course, completely took it and made the video, and that made it so I'm very proud of that cover because it did what I wanted to do, and I thought Michael subsequently became one of the biggest stars in the world, not because of the cover, but that certainly helps because everything was right at that time. And that was, you know, and just jumping back before that, yeah, because I know we got to know each other because of the Duck Rock thing coming out. So that was it. So INXS, and Kick, and then Bob Dylan Biograph, which is the box set I did for Bob Dylan, of his first box set I ever did, which has been always one of the things that people love. That 1960s photograph that I put on the cover, and it was interesting working with him, but that's a whole other story that I could talk about. We'd be here all day.
Let's go back to McLaren. Let's talk about the Duck Rock album. So You said that because obviously they've re-released a limited edition of the vinyls, and that's where you commented and said it's not the original because I did it and it doesn't exist. So that was your pedestal, not pedestal, your kickboard to start working with McLaren, and you worked on McLaren's albums from then on, all of them.
Well, Bow Wow Wow was the kickstart, and what Malcolm, what I liked about Malcolm, never once even asked me if I'd been to art school. Didn't even ask to know what I'd done. He was like, if you liked you and there's a vibe, that was it. He didn't give a shit what your background was or what your qualifications were or who you worked with. And me and him got on great. And I was also, he liked the fact that I could be critical with him and tell him when I thought something was shit, because nobody did that. And yeah, Malcolm did have some shit ideas. But that to me, okay, I always think this, when I say these things, it's hard to believe myself, but in life, to be part of one movement, being punk, is amazing. But to be part of two movements, punk and rap, is like beyond belief. So, so Malcolm's doing this record with Trevor Horn, and he wants to make his world record. And I remember we went to meet Trevor in the studio, and Trevor was like, Malcolm always had me with me because he used me as his henchman. If he didn't like anything, you go and tell him, you say this, you say that. And so we went to the studio to meet him, and Trevor's like, it's all kind of polite. And Trevor says, do you have a demo, Malcolm? And Malcolm's like, he pulls out of his bag this 78 RPM vinyl record on a Folkways record on Honduran dance themes, right? Gives it to Trevor. That's the demo. And Trevor looks at him and he's like, hold on, is he taking the piss? It was like when I was with, and Trevor suddenly goes, okay, I can deal with that, which I thought was brilliant for Trevor to do. So that's where it all began. Malcolm never demoed anything, but what he did demo, and what I did work with him, was the music for the fashion shows. They were his demo. Malcolm was incredibly secretive, right? He'd always say to me, yeah, I hope you haven't been playing this to anyone. He was really, really protective. He didn't want to give his stuff away to people. And I used to sit in with him when we did the fashion shows, and he would take this like Burundi and he'd put another stuff on top of it. That's where he demoed the music for the fashion shows. So he's off doing, they started doing this record. And at this point, we'd been in New York, and rap was still pretty much in the South Bronx. People in Manhattan never even heard of it. It didn't even have a name back then. It was like or rap, hip hop, or whatever. It didn't have a name. And so Malcolm says to me, oh, you've got to come to New York. He goes, you've got to come to New York. This is where we're going to go. This is where I want us to go with this new thing. So I went to New York, and I went to this place called The Grill, which is this nightclub in Manhattan. It's like going to the 100 Club all over again. This nightclub in Manhattan, Africa Bambaataa and Ramelzi, and they're playing this tiny club. And it's like mainly white kids, fashionable white kids, some black kids, because they didn't really come down from the South Bronx into Manhattan. Nobody in Manhattan knew what this was. And I thought it had the same vibe as it had at the 100 Club. There was something going on here. You could tell just by the people that were there that you knew that this was something. And I got to meet a guy called Michael Holman, who was a filmmaker, a black guy who knew everybody, knew the graffiti artists. Well, and I was fascinated on that. And listen, the first time I walked down the street in New York and I saw a kid breakdancing, it was like aliens had landed from Mars. I'd never seen, and you can't ever put it in perspective because everybody's seen that now. So, but imagine you've never seen that before, and suddenly you're seeing a kid spinning on his head. It absolutely fucking blew my mind. I mean, it just was like, I couldn't get my head around it. And they were like 14 years old. And it was like, I thought, this is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And then there was all this graffiti stuff going on. And I said to Malcolm, we've got to get all this energy. We've got to get all this energy for this cover. I mean, to me, this is what it was about. It was about this. It wasn't so much about the Honduran stuff or even the South African stuff. It was about New York. And so what is it Malcolm is really clever about? He had this ability to put things together that wouldn't normally go together. And when he was saying, well, I'm going to take Square Dance, I want to mix it with a rap record. And I'm like, you couldn't get two more opposite things. One's really white, one's really black. And he goes, no, but you don't understand. With a Square Dance, it's a call. So the instructor goes, take your partner by the hand and do-si-do your partner, right? Rap music is an instruction. Everybody in the house go, yeah. Brilliant. I just thought absolutely, he's absolutely right. It's like they both relate to each other. So when he did Buffalo Girls, the single, which when you think about it, again, there was no other record like it, especially in Europe, right? No, it wasn't a song. It was a non-song. Didn't have a verse on the chorus, really. It was just beats, and Trevor did a great job.
It's weird
as
well, because I actually listened to it with headphones. The beats are on one side, and the vocals and the scratching are in the other. It's a really strange record.
It's a strange record, and it was, and I think the fact that Malcolm found the Supreme team. So Malcolm left me in New York, and he goes, "Why don't you put this together? Try and get hold of Keith Haring and whoever else." And so Michael Holman, Keith Haring at that point was a doorman at the Mud Club, and again, back in those days, there was no cell phones. There was no a lot of people didn't even have phones, so trying to get hold of anyone was a complete nightmare. So I'd have to go out every night and hopefully bump into someone, and I didn't for ages. I was at Mayfair Hotel for 6 weeks, right, trying to find Keith Haring, and it became a big issue in Malcolm's court case when he left Charisma Records. But I also thought it's really important for me to embed myself into this culture and not seem like I'm just a snatch and grab guy. It's going to grab what their stuff. So I got very involved, and Michael Holman introduced me to Dondi White, the graffiti artist, and I went one night with him when he went to do the train cars, to spray, and that was an amazing experience because it was so dangerous. You had to climb over a huge fence, barbed wire. There were guard dogs barking. It was pitch dark. There was the third rail, the electric rail. I was shitting myself, to be quite honest. And so Gondi's in there with a tiny little flashlight, and he's doing, you couldn't even see what he was doing hardly. And I was like, oh, we've got to get out of here. And we got out. So I never actually saw what he did, but he sent me a picture of the train. He got a picture of the train. And it was amazing what he did. I don't know how he did it. I mean, I just don't know how he did it. And I just thought, that's brilliant. So we got him to do the Duck Rock logo, got Keith Haring to do that back print. And then I thought, and then Malcolm again came up with a great idea. He said he'd been to all these places, he'd been to South Africa, been to Central America, and he said the one thread there is throughout all of this is that indigenous people or people that are not necessarily artistically trained use what they've got to create something. So in Central America, it's their cars, extra horns on it, extra antennas all sticking out the car, bright colors. In South Africa, the Zulus would take cutlery and make crowns and headdresses out of them, stick forks in there and take drinking straws and make it into some kind of skirt. And in New York, it was the boom box, where they would walk around the boombox and they'd paint on them. And so, again, it's just such a brilliant concept that is. And so we thought that's what we're going to do, because then it was like, up until that point, you couldn't take your music anywhere. You could take a vinyl record, but it was too inconvenient. So this was your way of transporting music. So those Zulus in South Africa, when we had that boombox made and Malcolm took it to South Africa, they thought it was a deity. They thought it was some kind of it had horns on it, and they couldn't believe it, and it played music. And to me, that's the power of what that album cover is. It has such power that, and people related to that so much because it was a personalized thing. It was like a deity. It was like some kind of like animal or something like that with the horns on it and leopard skin on it. And it played this music, and the Zulus couldn't believe it, that there was this box and it was playing. And I love that.
Let's quickly talk about the upcoming book. So you've got a book coming up with Bob Gruen and Young Kim. Just tell me quickly about that.
Well, I was thinking these guys called Charlie and Rory put this book together called Heated Words, which you should check out. And they've got the stuff on the inside of the cover of the new Duck Rock cover, but basically in a few paragraphs, I saw their book and I thought that's brilliant, because they really encaptured the whole hip hop thing, the iron-on letters, and because we use that on Duck Rock, and what I liked about them was that some of the letters were falling off. Anyway, so they had a deal with Rizzoli, and they said, would you be interested in doing a book? Because we can go to Rizzoli, they've got a 10-book deal with them. And I said, yeah. I think we should tell the story of Malcolm influence on pop culture, because he's never really given the credit. People like Eminem give him the credit, and people who know give him the credit. Eminem used that in one of his songs, that first trailer trash girl goes around the outside. And that record was the first thing that Europeans heard, really, of what rap music was. But it wasn't just that, it was the street culture and the high fashion, because he went street culture, but he also went to the runways of Paris, and the graffiti, the art, and it was the first world album, and the imagery on it, and bringing the stuff from New York, bringing the stuff from South Africa, and putting it on there. And I just thought, people don't give Malcolm enough credit for it, really. I mean, some people do. People who know that Michael Holman do, but usually they miss that part of it out. And there was a lot of it. Wasn't just Malcolm. The Clash were in New York. It was funny. All these white punks from London were also in New York when the beginning of the whole. Well, I mean, rap had been going since 76, 77 or something like that in the Bronx, but it hadn't gone mainstream, even close to mainstream, until after Blondie did it with Rapture. But it wasn't really a rap song; it was a pop song, really. And so Malcolm's influence, I think, is not just musically, culturally, art-wise, film-wise, was massive on the way on this effect it had on the world. So it's an influence. And Bob Gruen, who I've known for years, happened to have been around when Malcolm was managing the New York Dolls, and took pictures of him when he was doing the Pistols. And Bob was around when we went to Tennessee to do the video for Duck for the Oyster, and was there at the Double Dutch video. And he's got some great photos. And young Kim, who's Malcolm's widow, who runs the estate, what I said, well, yeah, we'll do that. Just that period, that short period between, say, 82 and 84, right? Because so much happened there. And they talk about the Pistols, but I think this had a bigger effect on the world than the Sex Pistols did. And Malcolm doesn't get credit for that. It opened
let me know when the book comes out. Let me know, and I'll do a piece about the book on the channel.
It's going to be a while. It's probably not going to be too. They said probably looking at 25 before it's released.
Okay, that's fine. I can
wait. A lot of stuff to do.
The best things take time, but let me just do a quick fire because we're running out of time.
Yeah.
So I've got a couple of questions. These are quick answers. Which artist would you like to work with that you haven't worked with yet?
Interesting. Primal Scream. I love Primal Scream. David Bowie. I never met David Bowie. And Roxy Music, but I'd say not exactly contemporary anymore. But I love Primal Scream. I love that first Screamadelic. It's like, to me, it's like Never Mind the Bollocks. It's got its own worth to it, because it was all around there, and acid house was happening. It was brilliant. So yeah, Primal Scream.
Okay. And what do you miss from the UK, living in the States now? Is there anything?
Football.
Okay.
I mean, you get football here, but yeah, I miss that. I miss going. I'm a Chelsea fan. I used to love going to Stamford Bridge, and I used to go with Paul Cook, because Paul Cook's we used to sit in the West End together. I do miss going to games. I miss a lot of the culture. I still feel like I'm a foreigner in a strange land here, even though I lived here for 30 years. It's like I still feel very much English in that respect. I miss the weather in England. I just miss like getting the tube and just interacting with people and the museums. Just a lot of stuff. The English breakfast. I mean, there's lots of silly things that I miss, but yeah. What I do miss about it is the diversity of London. LA is very uptight about segregated, and if you're gay, you're this, if you're black, you're this, and everything. But in England, I think they've got it. London, in particular, I don't know about the rest of the country, but it's the most multicultural place I've ever been to. You see same-sex couples, interracial couples, and it's not self-conscious. People just get on with it. We're here; it's very self-conscious, and I do miss that about it. I know that it's got its problems post-Brexit and all that shit, but it's to me, I feel. Oh, I don't feel. I go back to London, I almost don't recognise the place when I go back there now. But and it's so expensive. All my friends have moved out. I miss the English countryside. There's a lot of. I mean, I could go on forever, but it's a good question. But yeah, just I was just thinking today, even I used to go see Chelsea play. I lived in the West End. I'd walk from Weymouth Street to Stamford Bridge. It was a long walk. I'd stop in a pub and have a drink on the way, and I'd walk back, and I loved it. And I'm born in London, and London is the best city in the world, and I would walk along the streets and say, "This is such a brilliant, it's such a great city." Walk to the park.
Right. Did you ever see the Jam out of interest when you were seeing stuff at the
yeah, I did. You know what? Yeah, I did. And you know, I got to appreciate it much more later than I did at the time. I found them at the time. I don't know, but then I thought, yeah, they did write some fucking brilliant songs, really brilliant songs, and they just seemed a bit. I hate to say this, but it seemed a bit suburban to me. Yeah, and I was, even though I was living in suburbia,
they were from Woking, weren't they?
Well, no, yeah, from Woking, yeah, God forbid.
But they've done some
but
great
why
jobs.
do you ask that question? Why do you ask that question?
I've got lots of stuff about the Jam. There's loads of Jam stuff on my channel.
Oh, good for you. Well, what they did do, which I thought was brilliant, is they brought that British, but that whole mud look was a brilliant look, and I think what they did with that, and their suits were great, and the whole Target RAF Target, and that real cool Britannia sort of thing. They started way before Oasis and everything. So I thought that was, and you couldn't get. I mean, Joe Strummer and Paul Weller are the most English singers you'll ever hear in your life. They don't try and sing in an American accent. They sing in their own accent. And nobody really done that. I mean, the Rolling Stones sung in an American accent. Most bands, but they were like, they're English. And I do love that about them.
So, okay. Nick, thank you so much for your time. Some great insights. And maybe we can do another episode and catch up with some other stories, because I know we haven't touched on Alanis Morissette and EMF and Houdini and all other stuff. Maybe.
Well, I'm happy to set another date to do something.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will do that. We're almost out of time.
Because there was, and it's been, I've enjoyed talking about. I mean, I've done these things a lot of times, and some of the things. God, well, I've said it all. So, but we touched on some things I hadn't touched on before, which is nice, and yeah, it'd be interesting to talk about because I've got some great stories about Alanis.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, well, thank you, Nick, and we'll be back on the channel soon.
Okay, great. Good to see you. Take care.
You take care, mate.